The ranch sat on the edge of the vast plains, stretching far enough to meet the horizon where the sky touched the earth. It was a modest place, built of timber and stone, worn by sun and wind over the years, yet sturdy and welcoming. The rancher, a man with a strong build and gentle eyes, worked tirelessly to keep the land productive. His farm was not just a livelihood, it was the heart of his family. Every morning he rose before the sun, feeding the livestock, mending fences, and walking the fields to ensure that nothing threatened the crops that had been nurtured from spring until harvest. His daughter, a spirited young woman with hair like spun sunlight and eyes that reflected both curiosity and courage, often accompanied him. She loved the ranch. But even more, she loved to explore its edges, feeling the wind against her face and listening to the whispers of the grass as it swayed. Though she was still young, she had grown skilled in helping her father with small tasks, gathering eggs, feeding the animals, and learning which plants were useful and which were dangerous. But she also loved stories. She would sit by the porch at night, listening as her father told tales of the land, of storms that could strike without warning, and of people who had lived and worked on the plains for generations. One afternoon, the tranquility of the ranch was suddenly broken. Dark shapes moved at the far end of the field. At first, she thought they were just shadows, a trick of the sunlight over the swaying grass. But then she realized they were animals, large, wild creatures that had strayed too close to the farm. They were devouring crops as they moved, and it was clear they meant to destroy much of the harvest if they were not stopped. Panic gripped her for a moment. She ran toward the farmhouse, calling for her father. But he was still far in the orchard, checking the irrigation. There was no time to waste. Then, as if appearing from nowhere, a figure stepped into the field. He moved with a quiet confidence, calm yet alert, like a shadow in the grass. He was an Apache warrior, strong and agile, with eyes that seemed to understand the rhythm of nature itself. He did not shout or chase the animals with fear or anger. Instead, he guided them gently but firmly, using movements, gestures, and sounds that seemed almost magical. The animals, sensing his presence and authority, retreated one by one, leaving the crops unharmed. The daughter watched, amazed. Every motion he made seemed effortless, as if he were part of the land itself, connected to it in ways she could not understand. When the danger had passed, the warrior turned toward the ranch. His gaze met hers for a brief moment, calm and respectful, acknowledging both her presence and the gratitude he could sense in her heart. She wanted to run to him, to thank him, but she was frozen in awe. She had never seen such bravery, nor such skill. It was as if the land had sent him specifically for that moment, to protect what mattered most to her family. Her father arrived shortly after, wiping sweat from his brow, and was astonished to find the crops untouched. Who did this?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly from relief. The daughter pointed toward the figure standing near the edge of the field. He saved us," she said softly. The rancher's eyes widened as he took in the warrior's calm demeanor. He felt a deep sense of gratitude. His farm, his livelihood, and the hard work of his family had been spared, and he knew it was not by chance. The Apache did not demand payment or recognition. He simply nodded politely, then turned to leave. But the rancher, moved by a mix of relief and respect, called out, "Wait. Please. At least tell me your name." The warrior paused and replied with a single, strong word, giving his name as a mark of respect. It was all the rancher needed to know. A bond, fragile but sincere, had begun. Over the next few days, the rancher could not stop thinking about the man who had saved his farm. He talked to his daughter about him, and she described every detail she had noticed: the way he moved, the way he seemed to understand the land, and how he had looked at her with such calm intensity. The father realized that this was not just a simple act of kindness. There was a depth to this man, a quiet honor that was rare in the world. He felt a mix of curiosity, caution, and admiration. He also understood that their worlds were very different. The rancher and his family lived by the rules of their farm, while the Apache followed customs and traditions shaped by the land and their ancestors. Yet, despite these differences, there was mutual respect. The daughter, meanwhile, could not get the warrior out of her mind. She wondered why he had helped them, why he had come at that precise moment. She felt a warmth in her heart, a sense of gratitude that went beyond words. More than that, she felt a curiosity she could not ignore. Who was he? What stories did he carry with him? What did the world look like through his eyes? Days turned into a week, and the Apache returned occasionally. Sometimes it was to help mend a fence, other times to check on the livestock. He did not speak much, but his presence was enough to inspire confidence. The daughter observed him closely, learning from his quiet methods and careful attention to detail. She realized that bravery was not only about action in moments of danger, but also about patience, respect, and understanding. The rancher noticed his daughter's growing attachment to the warrior. At first, he felt cautious. Their worlds were so different. How could they understand one another fully? But as he watched, he realized that the Apache's influence was positive. The farm was safer. The animals were better cared for, and his daughter had learned lessons that went beyond chores or simple farm life. There was honor in this man, and it had begun to weave itself into their daily lives. One evening, after a particularly hard day in the fields, the daughter and the Apache found themselves working side by side, gathering the last of the day's harvest. The sun was low, casting long golden shadows over the land. She paused, feeling the weight of the moment, and spoke words she had not intended to say aloud. "You protected my farm. My father says I must marry you." The words hung in the air, carrying both the weight of tradition and the simplicity of gratitude. The Apache stopped for a moment, surprised, but also thoughtful. He understood that this was more than a statement. It was an acknowledgement of honor, courage, and trust. The rancher, hearing her words, smiled quietly from a distance. He knew the weight of the tradition she referenced. In his world, gratitude and respect could be expressed in ways that bound people together, sometimes in ways that were unexpected but meaningful. He did not rush forward. Instead, he watched the exchange, knowing that something significant had begun not just between the two individuals, but between two worlds that had been strangers before that fateful day. That night, as the ranch settled into quiet and the stars blanketed the sky, the daughter reflected on the day. She thought of the warrior's calm strength, the way he had moved with the land, and how the farm had been saved. She understood that life was fragile, and protection, courage, and honor were gifts that could not be measured. Somewhere in the night, the Apache sat by the edge of the field, gazing at the distant horizon. He thought of the farm, the family, and the young woman who had spoken words that carried both innocence and wisdom. And so, the story of the farm and the unexpected protector began a story of courage, gratitude, and the first steps toward a bond that would change lives, bridging worlds and hearts that had once been strangers. The land, the family, and the warrior were now intertwined, each learning from the other, each teaching lessons that no school or book could provide. The plains whispered their approval, and the wind carried a sense of promise, as if the land itself knew that something remarkable had just begun. Days passed on the ranch, and life seemed to settle into a rhythm that blended hard work with quiet anticipation. The Apache warrior's presence became a natural part of the family's days. Though he spoke little, his actions spoke volumes. He repaired broken fences with skill and speed, guided the livestock safely across tricky terrain, and even showed the daughter ways to move quietly through the fields without disturbing the animals. Each day, she noticed something new about him: his patience, his deep understanding of the land, and the careful way he treated every living creature. At first, their communication was limited. Words were few, and gestures and expressions were their main tools. The daughter learned to understand the subtle movements of his hands, the way his eyes could tell her what he needed or what he was thinking. She began to anticipate his actions, helping him without him needing to ask. In return, he seemed to understand her needs, sometimes leaving small, helpful surprises for her in the barn or at the edge of the fields a bundle of fresh herbs, a carefully repaired tool, or even a bird feather placed delicately on the windowsill. Each gesture, small as it was, carried meaning and deepened the connection between them. The rancher watched these interactions closely. He had expected that the Apache's presence would help protect his farm, but he had not anticipated the bond forming between his daughter and this man from a world so different from their own. At first, he felt a quiet worry differences in culture, language, and tradition were not small obstacles. Yet, over time, he noticed something undeniable. His daughter's joy and confidence were growing, and the Apache's influence had brought new harmony to the farm. Work was done more efficiently, the livestock were healthier, and even the crops seemed to flourish. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Dark clouds rolled in quickly, and strong winds bent the trees until their leaves rattled loudly. The daughter was in the fields, checking the irrigation lines, when she saw the first signs of danger. A large branch had broken off from an old oak and was headed straight toward the barn. She froze for a moment, fear rising in her chest, unsure what to do. The Apache appeared almost instantly, as if sensing the threat before it had even fully formed. With swift, precise movements, he pushed the branch away from the barn, keeping it from smashing the structure or harming the animals inside. After the danger had passed, the daughter looked at him with a mixture of relief and admiration. "You always seem to know what to do," she said softly. The Apache nodded, a faint smile appearing on his lips. Words were still scarce, but their understanding of each other grew stronger with every shared moment of challenge and care. That evening, as the storm cleared, the family gathered in the farmhouse. Grateful that their home and land had been spared, the daughter could not stop thinking about the warrior and the calm courage he had shown. In the following days, their bond grew deeper. The daughter began to ask questions, curious about his life and traditions. She wanted to know how he had learned to move so silently, how he had come to understand animals so well, and why he had chosen to help them. Though his answers were brief, he shared stories in his own way, through demonstrations, small actions, and teaching her skills that could not be conveyed in words alone. She learned to track animals by their footprints, to read the signs of approaching weather, and to move through the tall grass without startling anything in her path. Each lesson was a bridge, connecting her world to his. The Apache, in turn, began to learn about her life. He observed the rhythm of the farm, the care taken with each animal, and the way the daughter worked tirelessly alongside her father. He saw the love and dedication she poured into her family's home, and it reminded him of his own people and the values they held dear. Though he had come to help them in a moment of crisis, he now found himself drawn to their way of life, appreciating the same virtues that had shaped his own community: respect, courage, and honor. The rancher, noticing their growing closeness, felt a mix of pride and concern. He understood the importance of tradition and the weight of the daughter's earlier words that she had expressed gratitude in the most significant way possible, offering herself in marriage as a sign of respect and trust. He knew that this was not a decision to be taken lightly. Both families, his own and the Apache community, would need time to consider the implications. Yet, he also recognized that the bond forming between his daughter and the warrior was built on something rare: mutual respect and admiration, rather than fleeting emotion or convenience. One afternoon, while repairing the barn together, the daughter accidentally dropped a tool near the edge of the field. The Apache immediately went to retrieve it, but instead of simply handing it back, he showed her a safer way to handle it in the future. She laughed softly, appreciating his patience and willingness to teach. "You always know how to guide me," she said. He nodded silently, but there was a quiet pride in his eyes. It was a small moment, but it reflected the larger truth of their relationship. Each had something to teach the other, and each had something to learn. The daughter began to see him not just as a protector, but as a teacher, a guide, and a companion. She admired his strength, not only in physical terms but also in character. He was calm under pressure, respectful toward every living creature, and always aware of the world around him. She found herself inspired to be braver, to act with more care, and to approach each task with thoughtfulness. Her father noticed these changes as well, seeing his daughter grow in ways that were both practical and spiritual. As weeks turned into months, the Apache's visits became a regular part of life. He helped with the harvest, guided the daughter in planting new crops, and even taught her how to find clean water in the streams that ran through the plains. She began to understand his quiet wisdom, appreciating the depth behind his silence. Each moment spent together strengthened a bond that transcended words, a connection built on trust, shared experience, and mutual respect. Their relationship, however, was not without challenges. The daughter sometimes felt the weight of uncertainty, wondering how their worlds could truly fit together. The Apache, too, was aware of the cultural differences that separated them, yet every challenge they faced only strengthened their commitment to understanding each other. They found ways to communicate despite language barriers, using gestures, actions, and expressions that spoke more clearly than words ever could. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of gold and orange, the daughter and the Apache sat on a small hill overlooking the ranch. They watched the animals grazing peacefully, the fields swaying gently in the breeze. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. She spoke softly, expressing her gratitude for everything he had done. Though his reply was simple, it carried warmth and acknowledgement. In that moment, she realized that their bond was no longer just about protection or duty. It had grown into something deeper, a connection of hearts and minds. The rancher observed them from a distance, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that the foundation of trust, respect, and shared experience was strong. He had seen his daughter grow under the warrior's guidance, learning lessons she would carry for a lifetime. And he had seen the Apache come to understand the values and traditions of his family, embracing them with honor and respect. As night fell over the ranch, the daughter lay in her room, thinking about the warrior and the life they had begun to share. She reflected on the storm, the challenges, and the quiet moments of learning that had brought them closer together. She understood that courage and love were not always loud or dramatic. They could be quiet, steady, and consistent, like the work of tending a farm or the care shown in protecting another's home. And so, life on the ranch continued. Each day brought work, learning, and moments of shared understanding. The bond between the daughter and the Apache deepened, building a foundation of trust and admiration that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. They learned from each other, protected each other, and began to see the possibility of a life together that bridged worlds and hearts. In those early months, the seeds of a remarkable story were planted, one of courage, gratitude, respect, and the quiet beauty of two people from different worlds coming together in understanding. The plains whispered their approval. The wind carried promises of future adventures, and the ranch, once just a place of work and survival, became a space where hearts could meet, learn, and grow. Life on the ranch had settled into a rhythm, but it was far from predictable. The seasons changed, bringing new work and new challenges. The Apache warrior and the daughter had grown close, their bond rooted in shared experience, mutual respect, and quiet understanding. Yet, as much as their connection strengthened, the realities of their different worlds began to assert themselves. The rancher's neighbors and the Apache tribe both noticed the growing relationship, and not all of the reactions were welcoming. Some of the neighbors whispered behind the rancher's back. They had seen the warrior helping the family, and had heard the daughter's words about gratitude and marriage. To them, it was unusual, even improper, for a settler girl to form such a close connection with an Apache man. Their skepticism was fueled by fear of the unknown. The plains had long been a place of tension between settlers and native tribes, and old prejudices lingered. Some believed that the bond could never last because the two worlds were simply too different. Others worried that the warrior's intentions might not be honorable, despite the obvious acts of courage and kindness he had shown. Meanwhile, within the Apache community, elders and peers discussed the situation as well. The warrior had done something remarkable by saving the farm and aiding the family. But marrying into a settler family was not a decision to be taken lightly. Traditions and customs guided their actions, and the elders were concerned about how such a union might be perceived. Some admired his courage, while others questioned whether it was appropriate. They debated among themselves, weighing honor, respect, and the potential consequences. Amid these pressures, the daughter and the Apache faced their own personal doubts and fears. The daughter wondered if her feelings and words were strong enough to bridge the gap between two very different cultures. She admired the warrior, respected him, and felt drawn to him, but she also understood the weight of tradition. Could they really navigate the obstacles that lay ahead? Could she convince her family and the neighbors that this bond was honorable, or even possible? The Apache, too, was aware of the challenges. His people had expectations, and he knew that his actions would be scrutinized. He valued honor above all else, and any decision regarding the daughter had to reflect not only his personal feelings but also the respect he owed to his community. He worried about disappointing either side or creating conflict, even though his intentions were pure. Yet, despite uncertainty, he remained committed to the daughter and the family he had helped. His patience, quiet determination, and calm strength became his guiding force. Nature itself added to the trials. A harsh summer brought scorching heat, threatening the crops and straining the livestock. The family worked tirelessly to keep the farm alive, often laboring from dawn until well past sunset. The Apache's skills became invaluable during this time. He knew how to guide the animals to water sources, how to conserve the irrigation system, and how to protect the crops from heat and pests. The daughter watched him with admiration as he moved through the fields with calm efficiency, his presence reassuring and steadying. She, too, learned quickly, absorbing his techniques and wisdom like a sponge. But human challenges were more complicated than natural ones. One afternoon, a group of neighbors came by the ranch. Their faces were a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and subtle judgment. They asked questions, some polite, others probing, about the Apache and his relationship with the family. The daughter felt tension rising. Sensing their skepticism, she wanted to defend him, to explain his honor and courage, but words sometimes failed her. The Apache remained quiet, standing tall and composed. His demeanor spoke louder than any explanation could. His presence alone commanded respect. The neighbors left eventually, murmuring among themselves, still unsure but no longer openly confrontational. The daughter and the Apache also faced moments of misunderstanding. Cultural differences meant that gestures and actions could be interpreted in multiple ways. The daughter would sometimes misread his silence, thinking it meant disapproval, while the Apache occasionally misinterpreted her eagerness as impatience. But each time they encountered these small challenges, they worked through them with patience and respect. They learned to ask questions, to observe carefully, and to listen without judgment. These moments, though difficult, strengthened their connection, teaching them that understanding often required more than words. It required empathy, attention, and trust. As time passed, the couple also began to confront personal fears. The daughter worried about the future, wondering if their bond could survive the scrutiny of both communities. She thought about the neighbors, the settlers, and the Apache elders, imagining all the ways their lives could be disrupted. She feared judgment and conflict, yet she also felt a deep conviction that their connection was real and meaningful. The Apache shared similar concerns. He knew that any misstep could bring dishonor, not only to himself but also to the daughter and her family. The weight of tradition and expectation was heavy, yet he remained steadfast, driven by a sense of responsibility and respect. Amid these challenges, moments of joy and learning kept them connected. They discovered small pleasures together, walking through the fields at sunrise, listening to the songs of birds, or sharing simple meals on the porch. The daughter learned to understand the rhythms of the plains in ways she never had before. She watched the Apache identify tracks in the soil, predict changes in the weather, and communicate silently with the animals. She marveled at his connection to the land and began to appreciate the depth of his wisdom. The Apache, in turn, learned from her. He observed her courage, resilience, and dedication to the farm. He saw how she could work tirelessly, solve problems creatively, and care deeply for her family. Her compassion and determination reminded him of values he had grown up with, and he found himself inspired by her perspective on life. Together, they shared knowledge, combining traditions and experiences in ways that strengthened their bond. One evening, a misunderstanding threatened to unravel their progress. A sudden disagreement over a task in the barn led to tension. The daughter thought the Apache was being impatient, while he believed she was not fully understanding the instructions. For a brief moment, frustration replaced the calm trust they had built. But rather than allowing anger to take hold, they paused, took a deep breath, and worked together to clarify their intentions. They realized that communication, patience, and empathy were essential. This experience, though challenging, taught them a valuable lesson. Even in moments of conflict, respect and understanding could guide them through. The rancher noticed these developments with quiet approval. He saw that his daughter was learning not only practical skills but also emotional resilience. She was growing into a woman capable of navigating complex relationships and honoring both tradition and personal conviction. The Apache's patience, strength, and honor complemented her growth, creating a partnership that transcended cultural boundaries. The rancher felt both pride and hope, recognizing that their bond had the potential to withstand challenges and enrich their lives. Despite ongoing difficulties, the couple began to envision a future together. They dreamed quietly of a life where their skills, values, and love could create a harmonious home. They imagined raising a family on the ranch, blending traditions, and passing on the lessons they had learned from one another. These visions gave them courage and determination, helping them face external skepticism, cultural tension, and the unpredictable nature of the plains. The Apache also reached out to his community, explaining his intentions and the respect he had for the daughter and her family. He emphasized the honor and gratitude that had guided his actions, seeking understanding from the elders and peers. While some were cautious, others began to see the sincerity of his commitment. Gradually, respect replaced doubt, though vigilance remained necessary to ensure that traditions and expectations were honored. Through storms, challenges, and misunderstandings, the bond between the daughter and the Apache strengthened. They had learned to rely on one another, to communicate without words, and to respect the worlds from which each had come. Their connection had grown beyond gratitude and admiration. It had become a partnership rooted in trust, courage, and shared experience. Each day brought new lessons, and each challenge, whether from nature, neighbors, or tradition, became an opportunity to grow together. By the end of this period, both families recognized the sincerity and strength of their bond. The daughter had matured, gaining confidence, courage, and wisdom. The Apache had proven his honor, patience, and commitment, earning respect from both the rancher and his own community. Though the road ahead was still uncertain, the foundation they had built, trust, understanding, and mutual respect, was strong enough to face future trials. And so, life on the ranch continued, filled with hard work, small victories, and shared experiences. The daughter and the Apache had navigated skepticism, cultural tension, and personal doubt, learning lessons that went beyond the practicalities of farm life. They had discovered the power of patience, empathy, and courage, and had begun to envision a future together, one built on respect, trust, and the quiet strength of hearts united across worlds. The plains seemed to acknowledge their journey, the wind carrying a sense of promise, and the land itself providing lessons in resilience and harmony. Though challenges remained, the daughter and the Apache were ready to face them together, guided by honor, understanding, and the bond they had nurtured through time, trust, and shared experience. Time moved steadily on the ranch, and the days grew longer and warmer as spring gave way to summer. The daughter and the Apache had grown even closer, their bond stronger than ever. Their shared experiences, from protecting the farm to learning from one another, had created a connection that went beyond words. It was built on trust, respect, and understanding, and it had begun to capture the attention of both their communities in ways that could no longer be ignored. The rancher, observing them closely, realized that the relationship was no longer just about gratitude or protection. It had grown into something deeper, something that could shape the lives of everyone involved. He reflected on the words his daughter had spoken long ago, words that had seemed bold at the time but now felt natural and full of meaning. The Apache had not only protected their farm, he had become part of their lives, their daily routines, and their hopes for the future. The rancher felt a mixture of pride, gratitude, and cautious hope. News of their growing bond spread slowly through both the settler and Apache communities. Some neighbors remained skeptical, unsure how to respond to the connection between a settler girl and an Apache man. But as they observed the couple's dedication, respect, and kindness toward one another, many began to soften. They saw that the bond was built on sincerity, not convenience, and that both individuals had grown in courage, wisdom, and understanding through their shared experiences. Gradually, admiration replaced suspicion. In the Apache community, elders watched carefully. They remembered the warrior's bravery, the way he had protected the farm, and the respect he had shown for the daughter and her family. They saw his patience, honor, and willingness to learn from others, and they recognized that his intentions were genuine. Though some questions remained, many elders began to acknowledge that his actions reflected the highest values of their people: courage, respect, and responsibility. Slowly, the community began to prepare for the possibility of a union that could honor both traditions. Meanwhile, the daughter and the Apache continued to navigate the challenges of daily life. Nature remained unpredictable. Sudden storms, dry spells, and the constant work of maintaining the farm demanded attention and effort. Together, they faced these obstacles with determination. The daughter had learned much from the Apache: how to track animals, anticipate weather patterns, and move through the land with awareness and care. The Apache had learned from her as well, understanding the rhythm of the ranch, the importance of tending to each detail, and the quiet strength of her character. Their evenings often became moments of reflection. After long days in the sun, they would sit on a hill overlooking the fields, watching the cattle graze, and listening to the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. They spoke of their dreams, hopes, and fears. The daughter imagined a life where they could combine the best of both worlds, learning from one another, building a home, and nurturing a family with the values they had discovered together. The Apache shared his thoughts as well, speaking carefully but sincerely about his desire to honor her, protect the farm, and live with integrity. One particularly beautiful evening, the rancher called both of them to the porch. He spoke quietly but with conviction. "I have watched you both for many months," he said. "I have seen your courage, your respect, and your care for this land and each other. It is clear that your bond is strong, true, and honorable. If this is what you both wish, then you have my blessing." The daughter's eyes filled with joy, and the Apache bowed his head in respect, feeling the weight and honor of the rancher's words. It was a moment of validation, a recognition that their connection had been built with integrity, courage, and sincerity. With the rancher's blessing, preparations began for a ceremony that would honor both cultures. Both families worked together, sharing traditions, foods, and customs. The daughter's family introduced the Apache to the ways of the settlers, including farming rituals, community prayers, and songs of gratitude for the land. The Apache shared stories, dances, and rituals from his own heritage, teaching lessons about courage, respect, and living in harmony with nature. The blending of traditions created a celebration that was both beautiful and meaningful, showing that respect, love, and understanding could bridge worlds. The day of the ceremony arrived, filled with excitement and anticipation. Neighbors, friends, and members of the Apache community gathered on the ranch, curious to witness this union. There was a sense of harmony in the air, a quiet acknowledgement that something special was taking place. The daughter wore a simple dress, reflecting her practical yet heartfelt approach to life. The Apache stood beside her, calm and dignified, representing strength, honor, and patience. Both of them understood the significance of the moment, not only for themselves but for the families, communities, and the land they cherished. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. Words were exchanged in both languages, honoring the bond that had grown over months of shared experience. Promises were made not just of love, but of respect, support, and commitment to each other's values and traditions. The couple's hands were joined, symbolizing the unity of their hearts and the merging of their worlds. Those present felt the sincerity and depth of their connection, and the air was filled with a sense of hope, gratitude, and joy. After the ceremony, life on the ranch continued, now with a renewed sense of purpose and harmony. The daughter and the Apache worked side by side, maintaining the farm, caring for the livestock, and tending to the crops. Their partnership was not always easy, but it was fulfilling. They had learned to trust one another completely, to communicate without words, and to face challenges together. The lessons they had learned about patience, courage, respect, and understanding became the foundation of their life together. The rancher often watched them from a distance, feeling a quiet pride. He saw his daughter's confidence, skill, and joy, and he recognized the Apache's patience, honor, and dedication. He knew that their union was not only a result of love, but also of mutual respect and shared growth. The farm flourished under their care, reflecting the harmony that had developed between the couple and their communities. As the years passed, their lives became a testament to the power of understanding and collaboration. The daughter and the Apache raised children, teaching them the values they had discovered through their journey. They taught lessons about courage, respect for nature, and the importance of bridging differences with empathy and care. The ranch became a place of learning and growth, where the wisdom of two worlds blended seamlessly, and where the land itself seemed to thrive under their guidance. Occasionally, challenges would arise: storms, illness, or disputes, but the couple faced them with the strength they had cultivated over years of shared experience. Each challenge reinforced their bond, reminding them that resilience, trust, and cooperation were as important as love itself. The Apache's guidance and the daughter's determination continued to inspire those around them, proving that hearts and worlds could unite when respect and honor were at the center. The story of their union became a symbol in both communities, a reminder that courage, kindness, and understanding could overcome fear and prejudice. The neighbors who had once doubted them came to admire the family, learning lessons about respect, trust, and the value of bridging differences. The Apache community, too, recognized the warrior's commitment, honor, and dedication, acknowledging that his actions reflected the highest values of their culture. Even as time passed, the daughter and the Apache never forgot the first day he had saved the farm. That moment of courage and selflessness had sparked a journey that led to love, partnership, and unity. They often reflected on their journey together, feeling gratitude for every challenge, every lesson, and every shared moment that had brought them to where they were. Their lives were a testament to the power of courage, honor, and the quiet strength that comes from respecting and understanding one another. In the evenings, as the sun set over the plains, they would sit together on the porch, watching the wind ripple across the fields. The animals grazed peacefully, the crops swayed gently, and the land itself seemed to hum with life and balance. They would speak softly, sometimes in their own words, sometimes in silence, knowing that their bond was unspoken, yet unbreakable. The plains, once just a place of work and survival, had become a home filled with love, learning, and harmony. Their story, passed down through family and community, became an inspiration, a story of courage, gratitude, respect, and the beauty of bridging worlds. It reminded everyone that true connection is built not only on affection, but on trust, honor, and shared effort. The daughter and the Apache had faced storms, skepticism, and cultural challenges. But through patience, understanding, and love, they had created a life that was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than either could have imagined alone. And so, the ranch thrived, the family flourished, and the plains whispered tales of bravery, respect, and unity. The daughter and the Apache lived not just as partners, but as a symbol of harmony between worlds, showing that even the widest divides could be bridged by courage, kindness, and the willingness to understand one another. Their journey was not only their own, it belonged to everyone who witnessed it, everyone who learned from it, and everyone who believed that hearts, when open, could create something truly remarkable.